I wanted to share my thoughts on the idea of the assumption of good intent, which has been percolating for a little while. In the context of living in community, where one analogy is living in a rock tumbler or being rocks in a rock tumbler, where by brushing up against each other, we break off the sharp edges and then become beautiful, polished gems. Um, yeah, in the process of that, there's a time period between when we start bumping up against each other and when we become the polished gems. And I'm not there yet. So I'm in this process where I'm still bumping up against each other. And I would say that, a few of us are still bumping up against each other. And I get to learn a lot about my own mind and the minds of others. And particularly when recently we've been delving more into MVC, it's that's come to mind as well about how um, through connecting with each other from the heart and trying to understand, like, what are your feelings, what are your needs, we get to learn about each other as well and learn where we get triggered or what certain things are difficult for us, not in a sense of indulging things or not working with the afflictions, but just seeing, like, where is this coming from and can I understand that? um, and seeing that, we are all here working with our ignorance, anger, attachment, jealousy, pride, and how that then plays out in the different spheres of service and practice that we do with each other. um, and looking at my own experience, I find it so easy to point the finger outwards for the source of the problem. In the situation is, it's that person that's caused my anger, it's that situation that I'm finding difficult, that object that is problematic, we should replace it by a new one, chuck it out, or various different things. And yeah, first of all, that's just negating the mind as a source of happiness and pain from the start. So that's a big warning sign. Um, but it's also, it's particularly with looking at others as a source of the problem, it's holding others in a poor quality view that is, in my own experience, is not helpful to hold others in a poor quality view. Um, yeah, and so wanting to come back to this assumption of good intent, which I think has two layers, one more general, and then one specifically living in a community of practitioners, and generally to come back to the idea that idea of everyone is doing their best at any given time with what they have in that situation. So even if that person is yelling at me and they're stressed, it's like they're doing their best with what they have in that situation. And can I allow space for that and not add the layers of judgment and my own resentment and anger on top of that to make the situation worse? Can I hold that person in understanding, knowing that I've done exactly the same thing at a different point in time, and how would I like to be held in that moment? Um, and then in the context of living in a community of Dhamma sisters and brothers, to have the assumption of good intent that everyone is actually trying to be of benefit. Um, that these rules, these structures, this feedback, these guidelines, this instruction or lack thereof, this is all coming from a place of others trying to be of benefit. And can I see that? Or have that assumption to guide how I'm interpreting the situation? Yeah, and we're all growing together and here, and sometimes we're not so skillful. I'm not so skillful. And again, to ask myself, can I allow for that? And if I look deeper at the heartfelt intention that I know each of us here holds, can I come back to that assumption of good intent and hold on to that most tightly, as opposed to my um, afflictions that are trying to impute various things onto the situation at hand and getting me all riled up about something that is just making things worse. Yeah, and so trying to change my inner framework, where a framework that creates enemies, that runs on good and bad and black and white and hard and fast distinctions about things, and wanting to have that assumption of good intent. And how would it change things if I thought that in every action that everyone here is doing, it was guided by a bodhicitta motivation, and that everyone was working within a framework that looks beyond this life? even when I see others struggling or seemingly under the afflictions, if I come back to, that is what is deep in their heart, deepest in their heart, that is their bigger framework that they're working for, I think I would be much more understanding, kind, and keep my own aspirations for working towards Buddhahood and the framework of beyond this life more alive as well, with that more clear picture of reality, I think. And to let go of this poor quality view of myself and of others. Because I think those two are very tied as well. If I'm looking at others and just judging, it's like, what am I doing to myself? They're not separate. So I just wanted to share that in the hopes that, yeah, it would benefit us all to keep coming back to this assumption of good intent and holding each other with eyes of kindness and understanding and really rejoicing in the beautiful goal of Buddhahood that we're all working towards here.